On today's show, we have a very special guest. Jonathan Shipman, better known as DJ Shippy, joins Locked On Stars. We talk about his journey to being the DJ for the Dallas Stars. We talk about his love of sports, his love of music, and what he does today and how important he is to the overall atmosphere at the American Airlines Center for Dallas Stars games. All coming up on today's episode of Locked On Stars.
Your Locked On Stars, your daily podcast on the Dallas Stars. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
Howdy, Stars fans. Welcome back to the Locked On Stars podcast, the only daily podcast covering the Dallas Stars, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day. I'm your host, Dane Lewis, your local expert on all things Dallas Stars hockey, credentialed member of the Stars Media, coming to you on this Monday, June 20th. And whether this is your first time here or you are a recurring listener, thank you for stopping in and making Locked On Stars your first listen of the day. Be sure to hit that subscribe button on YouTube or the follow button on your favorite podcasting platform. Leave a 5-star rating on Spotify or Apple Podcast if you like what you hear. Helps the show out a ton. But let's not wait any longer. Let's get into today's episode with Jonathan Shipman, better known as DJ Shippy. Welcome in, everybody. This is Dane Lewis, and I'm joined right now by a very special guest. First time on the show. We talked with Jeff K earlier this year, but now we have another guy who is responsible for keeping the energy alive in the American Airlines Center. Joining me right now on Locked On Stars. You know him as Shippy, but his name is Jonathan Shipman. But you know him, like I said, better as DJ Shippy. And Shippy, we're very excited to have you on the show today. How are you? How are you enjoying this offseason so far?
Man, first of all, thank you for having me. Second of all, the offseason's been kind of weird so far because, it was nonstop action for me for 8 months straight. And then all of a sudden, it's just kind of I still have DJ gigs that I do on Fridays and Saturdays right now. But other than that, my week's pretty wide open. So, everything's going great. I'm really enjoying the opportunity to recharge and relax. And I'm enjoying watching, the Stanley Cup runs and things like that, and watching other teams' DJs and kind of just comparing other teams and how we do things, and then how, other teams might approach similar situations. So it's been a great off season. I'm starting to get a little bit to the point where I'm like, all right, now I need something to do again.
Yeah.
I'm looking for ways to kind of fill out my DJ schedule during the week. But other than that, really can't complain. It's been good.
Yeah, that's awesome. I know that you do Stars games, you do Mavs games, so it was a busy season, but now glad that you are able to get some rest. And kind of where I want to start is a question that maybe even dates a little bit back to last year, or last hockey season rather. Like I mentioned earlier, had Jeff K on the show right before the season got started, and one thing that he mentioned was how excited he was to have full capacity crowds back at Stars games, back at Mavs games. What was it like for you last season with 25% crowds, and how much better did it make this past season where we had pretty much a full house just about every single night, at least at Stars games, and I'm sure with Mavs games as well?
Yeah, it was night and day, obviously. So that being my rookie season, that's why people, they ask me, well, how long have you been doing this? A lot of people didn't realize that I started last season because everybody was just, we were all in quarantine and a pandemic, and everybody was worried about a lot other things than who's playing the music at Stars games. And yeah, it was the maximum capacity we were allowed was 5,000 last season. And I think the most that we ended up having was 4,000 throughout the season during COVID. And so it was kind of weird as a rookie DJ because a lot of the stuff I'm playing, I'm like, the fans that were there, they were moving, and the camera guys at the American Airlines Center would tell me hey, you're doing a good job. We're able to find people to put on the Jumbotron that are actually still dancing and moving and things like that. One thing that was kind of weird is, obviously with Groobs before me, he had a couple of sing-alongs that he would play. And so I would try them out just to see if they would work. And I couldn't really tell. So I'm playing them. I'm like, I think they're singing all the small things. I don't know why they would forget the lyrics after a pandemic, but maybe they did, so there was a lot of stuff that I didn't feel comfortable using, because a lot of what I do is crowd participation, right? So there's certain stuff that I play to get fans just to clap their hands or just to get engaged with the game. And it was really tough to gauge what worked and what didn't work last season, just because it was such a small percentage of what total capacity is. So it was a great rookie season. And honestly, it was a great way for me to get going, just because it was easy for me because I didn't get a preseason either. Right. So my first NHL game of my career was a regular season opener with a banner unveiling, with all this stuff that like normally you don't do, in your first ever hockey game DJ.
Right.
So it was kind of a weird mixture of being thrown in the fire, but at the same time, I did really get a chance to hone in with the help of my boss Harpo, the rules in the NHL on like when the TV timeouts and stuff like that are. Like I had a lot of reps how to make sure that structurally I was good, and then I was able to kind of take that next step this season where it's like, all right, now I know what I'm doing. Now let's see what works. So it was definitely an interesting first season, but I would have loved for it to be full capacity, but you gotta play with the cards you're dealt, so.
Yeah. And certainly I think, fortunate as Stars fans that, there was access for at least a small percentage of people to go to games still. I know that was hard to come by just across the country, across the world. But, glad for that opportunity. And I guess good for you to get warmed up and kind of acclimated to what that life would look like. And speaking just of the DJ job itself, how does one necessarily come across that kind of job? Obviously, whenever you talk about professions in life, DJ at a big sports venue in a city like Dallas is maybe not super common. So what was kind of your journey to get to being the DJ for the Dallas Stars and Dallas Mavericks?
Yeah, so honestly, it all starts with Groobs, because Groobs was getting ready to leave for the Rangers, and he's the DJ, the music director for the Texas Rangers right now. And so basically during the pandemic, he's one of my best friends. Like I talk to him all the time, and we were talking, and I was like, man, like I don't know what I'm going to do coming out of this pandemic. And I'd already gotten some DJ turntables that I was teaching myself during the pandemic how to DJ the whole time. And Groobs was kind of like, well, how would you feel about being like the Dallas Stars DJ maybe? And I was like, what? I was like, that's my favorite hockey team. Hockey's my favorite sport by far. Like ever since I was a little kid, like I just love hockey. So I was kind of like, I mean, dude, that sounds awesome. I was like, I don't really know what all that entails, but I know music. I've been a drummer. I'm a drummer. Like I've been drumming since I was 10 years old. So music's been something that has been in me for my entire life. I played piano before I got bored of that and found drums because it was a lot louder and more fun. And it just all kind of worked together. And Groobs did say too that he thought that he came from the Ticket right before he was the Dallas Stars DJ, and he was a board op there. Well, I was a board op at 105.3 The Fan before I became the Dallas Stars DJ. So I think he already knew that I had a similar skill set to him in terms of radio, like what I knew how to do. And he obviously knew that software and stuff very well. So he was like, man, I'm going to throw your hat in the ring. And, after that, it's on you to see what happens. But I'll certainly get you an interview. And so I had an interview with Harpo and Dan Stukel during the pandemic via Zoom. And they, I guess, so then they brought me in for the Stanley Cup run, right? And they were doing watch parties. Well, for those watch parties, Groobs had Texas Rangers, or he had playoff games. It wasn't Rangers games, but the playoffs were held at Globe Life Field. So he was unavailable. So I think that was kind of like my tryout. Like they never told me like, hey, this is your tryout, but I was approaching it like, hey, don't screw this up. I feel like this is a tryout.
Today's episode of Locked On Stars is brought to you by our friends at BetOnline. BetOnline.net is your number one source for all your betting stats and sports info. Find all the latest sports developments, news, and odds, including this year's basketball championship matchup, the NHL Stanley Cup Finals, Major League Baseball, and of course, the latest fighting news from MMA, UFC, and boxing. They are your continued source for all your sports wagering information, including live betting, esports, and more. Head to the website today or use your mobile device to learn more about the trends and action. BetOnline.net, where the game starts. Hey, Stars fans, Dane here. We have an important favor to ask you. We've put together a survey so we can learn more about listeners like you and make your favorite Locked On podcast better than ever. This is your opportunity to tell us what you like and don't like about Locked On Podcast. Go to lockedonpodcast.com/survey right now to get started. It won't take very long, and everyone that completes a survey can qualify for a chance to win one of 10 $100 Ticketmaster gift cards. To take our audience survey, go to lockedonpodcast.com/survey. Thank you guys so much for your help. Now let's get back to today's episode. Yeah, well, that's super cool and super unique, obviously, to kind of have that journey and to see, where you are now of playing in front of these packed houses night in and night out for playoff runs for both teams. Obviously, a very unique occupation, and even getting to carry the DJ life over into the offseason, like you said, doing some stuff on Fridays, Saturdays, but shifting kind of to the game day look. What does a typical game day look like for you? Because I think it's easy. I know even for me, but especially I think just maybe the common fan to say, oh, there's music that gets played. I mean, but that happens at sports games. But I have to imagine that there's quite a bit that goes into it more than just showing up and, hitting play on an iPhone or hitting play on a board.
Yeah, absolutely. So, I mean, really, I'm preparing for the season all throughout the season. Like when I'm watching movies, when I'm watching TV shows, when I'm watching, even if I'm watching a baseball game or something, like it's now just a natural thing for me to be listening for whatever music's playing. And then I'll hear the song and I'll be like, dang, like, would that work at a Stars game or would that work at a Mavs game? Like, I just automatically think that way. And so, I mean, going into each game day, I have to download 3 different Ice Girls tracks that obviously are at specific times. And then other than that, there's just a bunch of like cutting music, editing it, bringing in new stuff, because I never want the stuff to get stale, right? Like I felt like, for the first season and maybe for the first part of this season, I was kind of relying on a lot of the older stuff that was being played. But as I said, like once I started to get more comfortable and I started playing more stuff that were my ideas, because I knew what Stars like because of what Groobs left me with his playlist, like with his library. But what I didn't know is do they like this type of music? Like I found out they like a lot of funk. Like I started playing a lot of James Brown that gets a lot of great reaction at Stars games. And, I brought in a lot more EDM as well. Just stuff that's high energy and, able to keep the crowd pumped up, something easier for them to clap along to, or just something that just gets you excited for a big moment in the game. And so I think that's where watching Stars hockey my entire life. I've been a fan my whole life. So I know kind of these big moments, the big face-offs and things like that. And so I think that's really helped me be able to kind of curate the playlist. So yeah, there's a lot that goes in each game day. And then on game day, we have a rehearsal beforehand. I'm there. So we get dinner like 4 hours before the game starts. So I'm usually there about 5 or 4.5 hours before that. Checking all the audio, making sure the new songs that I bring in sound good on the system. Because sometimes, depending on where you get your songs from, you can tell if it's not a very high quality wave file, right? Like if you have a poor MP3, it sounds wishy-washy. There's not enough bass or there's not enough like treble. Like it's just kind of all mushed together. So it's honestly like it's a lot for each game. And then when you come around to the holidays, like this season, for example, like I brought in a Valentine's Day playlist. Like we played the Avalanche. We lost 3-0. The game was horrible, but like I had fun playing Valentine's Day stuff, right? Like everything I played was like Shot Through the Heart, You're Too Late, like You Give Love a Bad Name. I played I Want It That Way for the first time on Valentine's Day. So it's little stuff like that I try to do as the season goes on, to, kind of freshen up the playlist and make things relevant to what's happening in the time. Like when everything happened in Ukraine, like I played Sunday, Bloody Sunday, on that next game. I think it was on a Sunday too. Just kind of like, I'm not going to dwell on it, but at the same time, I'm not going to act like all that's not happening. So yeah, I try to, just make sure the playlist is relevant throughout the whole season. That's hitting a bunch of different demographics, because you got to have a fan and that's what a lot of people I don't think understand is I'm not playing music for my demographic. Like I'm not playing it for yours or whoever was listening. Like I'm playing it for a little kid who might be there who's as young as 6, 7, 8 years old. And I'm also playing for somebody on the other end of the spectrum who may be 80, 85. We've got 90-year-olds like at these games, So I try to mix it all in so that everybody hears at some point something that they like.
Yeah, I think that's the important part is you have such a broad audience. There's not one specific type of person at these games. And so having to please a crowd of 18,000 people is not just something you can, show up and throw together last second. So certainly, something that you always have to take into account and, be knowledgeable of going into these games, which I feel like you nailed on the head this season with the Stars. And you talked a little bit about being a hockey fan pretty much ever since you were a kid. Was that the only sport that you kind of watched as a child, or were you kind of into multiple sports? Has it always been Dallas sports that you've enjoyed? What was kind of your upbringing as far as sports that made you still love it to this day?
Yeah, I love all Dallas sports. I was born in Dallas, raised in Plano, and what made me love hockey is my grandma, actually, my Nana. When I was a little kid, I would go over to her house and she would always watch the Stars with me. Like I would go over and be like, all right, Nana, let's turn on the Stars game. And we'd stay up and watch them. Like back in the Newendike, Guy Carbonneau, like I was at the 1999 parade. I was 9 years old. There's a pretty cool picture of me with my mom and my sister, like all just hanging out at the parade together. So I love all sports. Like I love football, so I love the Cowboys. I love the Mavericks. I'd say that the Mavs and the Stars are probably my top 2 favorite teams. And then it would go Cowboys, Rangers after that. And not to slight the Rangers, it's just baseball is, out of all those sports, is the least intriguing to me, but I still enjoy watching it from time to time. So yeah, I'd say it's, obviously my roots here in Dallas that made me a fan of all these teams and made me really appreciate these jobs that I got. And then it's my grandma who ultimately made me, because that's a weird thing. Like a lot of kids in Dallas, they're not hockey fans. Like a lot of people, that's a kind of a rare thing. And I didn't play hockey. I can't ice skate. I'm working on it though. I'm working on it. I got a hockey bag. I'm going to try to teach myself how to ice skate. But that my grandma is the one who, really turned me into a Stars fan, just because I had so much fun going over there and watching it with her. And she'd always reward me with some mint chocolate chip ice cream.
Hey, that's a win-win right there. You can never go wrong with the mint chocolate chip. And yeah, you bring up an interesting point of, kids in Dallas. I think it's a thing for kids in Texas. I mean, I'm from the West Texas, Lubbock area. Almost little to no hockey out there. And I think just with Dallas, you have, one of the most recognizable brands in the entire world with the Dallas Cowboys, and even with the Mavericks with Dirk Nowitzki for so long. And now they have Luka. Do you think that maybe there's been a little bit of a rise with the Stars with the Cup run 2 years ago? Have you noticed anything like that where you think the fandom is slowly increasing? Because there's always the loyal Stars fans that have, that are like you, that grew up watching the team, have been there, through thick and thin. But do you think that there's now, with a recent championship run, even though they didn't win, they got really close? Do you think that there's been somewhat of a rise of attention towards the Stars in Dallas? Have you seen anything like that?
Yeah, I think so for sure. I think obviously, I think any city is like this. As soon as whatever team makes the playoffs, whether it's your least favorite sport or your favorite sport, it's a kind of a bandwagon thing, right? The whole city gets behind it. I think that's cool. Like, I don't think that's something to shame people about. I welcome people like, hey, I don't care if you don't know hockey. I don't care if you've never been a Stars fan or don't have any Stars here. Watch the game. Take the time to learn the game, because I think that's the thing that's held people back the most over this whole, like, in terms of Texas and, not the typical East Coast or like, Michigan area type hockey fandom, or I guess it's just the North, really, right? Like the North versus the South in terms of hockey fandom, with a natural, I don't know, like a gravity or something towards hockey in the North. I know Stefan Nason, who played, I don't know who he's on now. He played with the Senators. I think he was drafted by the Senators. He was on the Ducks for a little bit. He was friends with my little sister. And then, like, in middle school, he moved to Minnesota because he was so good that he couldn't really, nobody could tell how good he was because nobody here was at his level of competition. So, but I think, like, in terms of fandom, that's one of my jobs too, right? Like, I want even a casual Stars fan, or maybe somebody who doesn't even know hockey, when they walk into that arena, I want to provide vibes to where they're like, even if they don't know what's going on the ice, that they're like, man, like, I enjoyed the music, or that was a funny video that they played up on the Jumbotron. I think that's where game presentation can really help out a franchise or a sport, because you make something that might not be super appealing to a person, you can make it appealing to them by just making it fun, So I think that that's a big reason. I think it's a combination of the postseason success, but I also think it's we've built a special vibe at the American Airlines Center with Stars fans. Like, this season, I was able to bring in even more sing-alongs that we've never done before. And at the beginning of the season, I was playing a lot of the old ones just to kind of get everybody in okay, this is what we're doing. We're singing this, right? And so after that, I was like, all right, I see kind of what's going on. So I literally have it down to a science, like by seconds, of about how long it'll take for the ref to drop the puck. So I find a spot in that song about that time, and I cue it up from there to where I can let the fans, keep carrying the song on from there while play goes on. So I think it just speaks gratitude, or it speaks volumes to the Stars fans, that, the diehards that are there every time, that are carrying on these traditions. It's making it easy for new fans to come in and be like, oh, Mr. Brightside, I know this song. Everybody else is singing. Like, I'm going to sing, So I think it's just a really cool vibe that we've built. And obviously the team has got a lot of young players that's showing a lot of promise, with Robertson, Ottinger, Hintz. I think it's just a combination of everything. Like, I'm really looking forward to the next few seasons of Dallas Stars hockey, especially with some of the prospects they got coming up.
Yeah, it's going to be really exciting. I know I'm excited for that as well. And yeah, I think, the vibe that you talk about in the AAC is a testament to the work that guys like you and Groobs put into, the production of it all, and making it not just attending a sporting event. All of it is a spectacle, from, the intermission times, or even whenever there's those breaks in between, moments of play. There's always something going on. And, I went to school here in Dallas for college, and that was one thing that people always said, even if they weren't hockey fans, they would say, oh, you have to go to a Stars game, because they're just fun to go to. And the energy in the building there's always something going on, always music playing, always something to look at. And then I think hockey also just it's similar to soccer. Like, there's reasons that people love soccer too, it's different than other sports because there's not always scoring happenings, but when those moments do happen, when there's a big hit or a big goal or a really cool save, like, the building just loses its mind. And sometimes that those things don't happen until late in the game. And so there's all this pent up energy. And I think it makes for a unique atmosphere that you can't always get at a football game, or even, baseball, basketball, which those sports are great as well, and they have their own strengths. But I think that's what makes hockey so unique. And you mix that with, you said, like the presentation, the music, and the recognizability of said music. And I think it just makes an all in all really nice experience for the fan. And you've mentioned a few of the tracks that get played quite a bit. You talked about Blink-182. You mentioned Mr. Brightside a second ago, and there's even some other ones I know. Friends in Low Places is a big one. Yeah. When it comes to you, though, what is your personal favorite sing-along track that gets played at every game?
So my personal favorite is probably Living on a Prayer, which I didn't bring in until towards the end of the season, because we were living on a prayer for quite some time. And I think I think that one ended up being my favorite just because. So there's some people who don't know Mr. Brightside. There's some people who don't know all the small things. I love Friends in Low Places too. I think that that's a tradition that we're going to probably keep going in the third period for future seasons. But I think there's just something about living on a prayer when everybody just yells, "Oh!" Like everybody doing that in unison together. Like I can't imagine. I mean, I don't know, like how opposing team or players feel, or how the home, the Stars players feel. Like if that gives them a jolt of energy, it's like, dude, our fans are into this. Like, they're having a good time, they're singing, and obviously the sing-alongs don't really work as well if you're not winning or if you're not tied. But I think Living on a Prayer turned out to be my favorite one, just because it seemed like everybody sang it, and there were some times where they were. The fans would be singing, and I'm sitting there, and I've got a headphone on, so I typically can't hear like super well because it's like sound canceling. And there's a few times I'm sitting there, I'm like, dude, it is loud in here. Like they dropped the puck 10 seconds ago, and they are still singing their lungs out. So I think that's my favorite one that I use this season. I really like. I know it's a controversial song, or not controversial, but I guess it's real. You either like it or you don't, right? The song by Lit, my own worst enemy.
Yeah.
I love that one too because it's got that same like, please tell me why, like that whole like that long note, right? I think that's where a lot of the fun comes in because once some fans have had a few drinks in them or something, now they're ready to belt out My Own Worst Enemy or Just a Friend by Biz Markie, or Living on a Prayer, or any of the other sing-alongs that we play.
Yeah, I think it's always interesting to hear too how long the fans will take the song, because you would think there's a point where you say, okay, this is where the sing-along stops after they reach the end of the chorus, but sometimes like certain packs of fans will keep going, and I think that just adds to the the energy and atmosphere inside the building. And again, like you said, it depends on sometimes wins and losses. I know that sometimes when the Stars are down 2 or 3 goals and Friends in Low Places comes on, it just hits a little bit different. So, I personally still, I'm always happy to hear that song. I'm a big country music fan myself. So that one, I know Family Tradition by Hank Williams is also a recurring one as well. That one, I think a little bit earlier in games, at least when I've heard it when the fans are, really starting to hit their stride as far as energy and whatnot. So yeah, lots of great sing-along songs. And you said that you really enjoy music, obviously working in radio, working in this job. You have to have a special passion for music. And we talk about the sing-along tracks, but when you're not on the clock or not working, what is some of your personal go-to music?
Oh man, I love a little bit of everything. I really love the Red Hot Chili Peppers. It's been my favorite band since I was a little kid. I love listening to like Post Malone just dropped a new album. I like Post Malone. I like to stay up with recent hip hop. I need to get more in tune, I guess, with like the newer rock that's coming out. Because I haven't really. That's one off season kind of goal of mine is to kind of dive into that space because I do love rock music. Like I grew up on Blink-182, Sum 41, even things like I already said Red Hot Chili Peppers, and I still listen to all that alternative music if I'm in a nostalgic mode. So yeah, I'd say typically, and I'll listen to EDM sometimes. Most of the time I'm listening to EDM, it's literally for Stars games. So it's me listening to EDM if I've got a long drive because it kind of helps the drive go by faster because I don't know the song necessarily, but it's not like house music where it just repeats itself over and over again. But like when I was a kid, I used to run to EDM or like techno just because I wouldn't remember how long I'd been running. Because I typically, if I'm listening to my favorite song, I'm like, well, I know this song's like 3.5 minutes long. So
right,
like this is only 3.5 minutes. Dang, like it feels like way longer than that. But yeah, so I'd say typically I listen to anything from alternative rock to hip hop to a little bit of EDM, and yeah, a lot of Red Hot Chili Peppers.
Yeah, that sounds like a pretty good lineup of music. Really, a lot of diversity there, and obviously, I think that shows with Stars games as well. I imagine some of that's some of your picking, some of it is stuff like you said Grooves had on his playlist. And got a couple more questions for you before we go. And the first of them being, you said you've been doing this since obviously in the COVID year where there weren't as many fans, but now you've had this full season under your belt with almost full attendance crowds, a few playoff games for the Stars. Is there a particular game or moment within these games that you've worked that you would say has been your favorite, or a moment that you feel like you'll remember forever?
Dang. Yeah, definitely the whole doing all of Sergei Zubov night, and then I got to DJ his after party too afterwards. That was awesome. I mean, there's a lot of moments that happen for me with the Dallas Stars games, like where they score, like especially late in the season when we're making the playoff push, and I'm sitting there and like I'm a huge fan. I'm like fighting back like happy tears of like, and also just like, all right, don't forget to do this and this, and like I'm like, you got to still remember what you need to do, But I would say that the Sergei Zubov night was definitely a really, really special night for me. That's one I'll never forget. It took a lot of preparation. You were asking earlier about the preparation for those nights, like especially a jersey retirement, but even like our theme nights, like Noche Mexicana. We do Pride Night, NASA Night. There's all these different theme nights that we do. Those require like even extra effort from, and it's all worth it, but there's a lot that goes in. I'm typically up till 3 or 4 the night before, or that morning, because I'll be laying in bed. I'll be like, wait, that song's about space too. And it's like, I need this for NASA night, So, but yeah, the Sergei Zubov thing was really awesome just because it really, that's like the Dallas Stars I grew up on, like that's what I remember watching when I was a little kid. I have the VHS tape somewhere at my parents' house of the whole Stanley Cup run. My parents would let me stay up late to watch it. I dyed my hair green for the playoff run. That was really, really cool. And then to be able to hang out with Sergei Zubov and like really, get to know him, and how appreciative he was of me DJing his after party. And he was like, hey, can you stay here tonight? Can you play music for 1 hour longer? And I'm like, dude, this is your night. Like, it's like midnight right now. I'm good. I will keep playing music for you. So I would say that whole thing, and just seeing all the people, all the former players and everybody come out on the ice and the videos rolling, just like that whole night was just a big flashback of all these memories that I had growing up as a kid. And like having all those memories come back to me while I'm sitting playing the music for the ceremony and for like having a huge hand in all that. It was really surreal. And it was just kind of one of those moments, because sometimes I have to pinch myself where I'm like, dude, like you used to be a fan just sitting in the stands cheering, and now like I'm still cheering obviously, but now I get to work for the team and I get to, have some type of hand on the environment and the atmosphere of the AAC. And it was just that day of doing Sergei Zubov's retirement ceremony and then the after party that was a day I will never forget.
Yeah, that's so cool. And I imagine a surreal moment of getting to watch him win the Stanley Cup and, watching the Stars throughout the years. That's an awesome moment for sure. And one last question before we go. And you mentioned it a little bit at the beginning that you've been watching a little bit of the Stanley Cup playoffs. And as we're recording this, we're a few hours away from game one. So got to ask, as I've been asking a lot of guests on the show as of late, who do you have winning the Stanley Cup between the Lightning and the Avalanche?
So I saw Braden Point is supposed to be back tonight. So if they didn't have Braden Point, I would take the Avalanche. But I think, I hate to say it, like, trust me, Stars fans, I do not want to say this. So you asked me, though, what I think is going to happen. I think that the Lightning are going to beat the Avalanche. And I think it's just going to come down to goaltending, whether it's, Darcy Kemper or Francois. Is that how you say it? Francois?
I think so, yeah.
Whether it's either of them in net, they're not touching Andrei Vasilevsky. And I feel like the Igor's better chant like really lit a fire under him, like I don't know why Rangers fans did that, by the way. Like this dude is an animal. He's insane. And you're going to talk crap to him. Like, I don't know. I guess it's a New York thing. I'm not sure, but
yeah.
But yeah, I just think, I hate to say it, but I think the Lightning are going to three-peat. And I I'm in a weird spot. Like, who are you cheering for? Because I don't want the Avalanche to win either.
Right.
Like,
Right.
I don't
Yeah.
want Avs fans next season. Like, I don't want to deal with them. Oh, you won a cup. Like, you know what I'm saying? I still don't. I'm all. I don't want to root for the Lightning though. So
Yeah. It's a tough place to
win?
be in as Stars
Can the
fans.
Stars win somehow? Can we just like switch them out for the Avalanche real quick? We played the Lightning
Right.
well at
Yeah.
home at least. Beat them 1-0.
Yeah, and I feel like they held their own 2 years ago. I mean, it was in the bubble and, lots of injuries and whatnot, a tough road to get there. I feel like they played them well. I mean, took them to 6 games. So, yeah, it's
absolutely.
it's a tough series for Stars fans to choose a side. But I'm with you. I think the Lightning, unfortunately, three-peat, and I think a lot of people are starting to feel that way, especially, like you said, if Braden points back and Vasilevsky's on his game, which he likely will be, just given his track record in the playoffs over the past 2 seasons. It'll be interesting because he hasn't faced an offense like Colorado's. I mean, they can really just do it all with the puck. And I think Cale Makar might be the second best player in the NHL, not named Connor McDavid. So
I agree. He's incredible to watch. I hate saying it. Like, I hate giving the Avalanche any sort of props, but I can give him personal props.
Yes.
He just sticks out on your screen so much. And yeah, I wish I could ice skate like that. And, I wish I was as good at anything as he is at hockey.
Right. Yeah, that would make life so much easier. And we love Miro here in Dallas, and that's the kind of player that I aspire in my head for Miro to be. And Miro can do a lot of things really well. But yeah, Cale Makar just in a league of his own. It feels like. Well,
and hey, maybe we're obviously getting a new coach in Dallas. Maybe in a new system. Maybe I'm playing on his correct side. Maybe he will show more of that off because he's got it. Like,
yeah.
He's got it. So, I don't know. We'll see what happens. I'm definitely excited for next season, though.
Yeah, I am too. I know the coach still hasn't been announced, or we don't really know who it's going to be while we're recording this. For all I know, when this list comes out, it could be told, and we'll know who's there. But yeah, I'm right there with you. I think it's going to be an exciting season with, like you named so many young guys earlier, Robo and Otter, Rope Hintz, even guys like Jacob Peterson, I think showed a lot of potential. So it's going to be an exciting year for sure. But Shippy, certainly do appreciate you coming on today's episode. If there's anything you want to promote, social media or anything else that you would want the Stars fans at home to know about, this would be a great time to do that.
Yeah, so I'm at Shippy Spins on everything. I've got a Facebook page, so you can like my Facebook page. Follow me on Twitter at Shippy Spins, or follow me on Instagram at Shippy Spins. Obviously, the Stars content will be a little bit light right now, but I always try to, post on my story and kind of whatever insight I can give into, behind the scenes life. I try to do that on all my different social media platforms. So yeah, if you follow me on there, right now I'm doing Fridays and Saturday nights at Art Park in Trinity Groves, which is a really cool area. So I DJ from, I think it's like 7:30 to 11:30 or midnight, something like that, every Friday and Saturday. But by the time, in the future, I may get more gigs and this and that. So if you just follow me on social media and you want to come see me do my thing out and about, I would certainly appreciate that.
Yeah, well, Stars fans, you heard him. You can find him on social media and get all the whereabouts of what Shippy is up to this offseason, as well in the regular season as well. But Shippy, thank you so much again for coming on today's episode.
Yeah, no problem, man. I had a great time. Appreciate you.
Well, I hope you guys enjoyed that special interview. Such a special honor to have Jonathan on the show. I know that many of you know and follow him on social media. You guys are obviously, if you've been to a Stars game, you've probably taken part in a sing-along. And so really great interview, really great guy. Be sure to go check him out on Twitter. And if you haven't been to a Stars game live and you are looking to do so, I highly encourage it this coming season. It is a incredible experience and such a good time. But thank you guys for tuning into this Monday episode of Locked On Stars, for making us your first listen of the day. Be sure to subscribe to our show, follow our show wherever you listen to your podcast at. We are free and available on YouTube as well as your favorite podcasting platform. We will be back here tomorrow with more Dallas Stars offseason content. Thank you guys again for tuning in to the show. Be sure to find and follow me on Twitter at Locked On Stars and at Dane_Lewis. But we will be back here tomorrow. Be loud, wear green, go Stars. You guys know the drill. We'll see you back here on the next episode.